on June 25th at 9 a.m. for a special meeting of the Lake County Board of County Commissioners. We have one agenda item, which is discussion and consideration of a Lake County housing developer for lots 25 through 32, block Stevens and Leiter, and lots 1 through 16, block 21, Stevens and Leiter. Have Jackie as the lead, but I see Michael Yerman here as well, so I don't know which order you all want to go in, but yeah, I think we can just turn it right over to you. And I'll just say there is a desired outcome of a BOCC decision.
There is a desired outcome. So as you know, we had 5 original applicants submit for the development of for sale affordable housing to be developed on, you read the legals, I'll call them the hospital site that was acquired, and the school district site that was also acquired for the benefit of the residents of Lake County. At this time, previously it was narrowed down to 3 developers, and after the initial round of proposals, the BOCC toured the developers' different sites and products, as well as wanted to try to get as best of a finish and final costs that we could try to get as apples to apples to apples. Now, that said, each of their products is different. They're different sizes, different square footages, so there's only so close you can get. But things like same type of flooring, same type of countertops, same type of exterior sidings, those were the types of things that were revised and resubmitted last Thursday and presented to the BOCC over the weekend to look at for their consideration. You know, from where I sit as a consultant, I think we're within the strike zone for pricing to really be able to deliver housing from 80 to 140%, which is what we have to do under the DOLA grant that we're working on. And then so I don't think I'll be very much of a help on trying to provide you guys with any certainly answer any questions or provide opinions, but I will say that after doing reference checks and talking with different projects and different bankers or builders or even local planners, I think all 3 are capable of delivering housing for the community. The last thing I will say is what your decision today actually is versus what it isn't. So today, what you will be doing is instructing town legal staff and town staff to enter into negotiations with a selected developer. This first contract is very much in the vein of continuing to reduce development risk, because all development has risks. And the first contract will be working with the selected development firm to do design work for two purposes. One, to get the site ready so that we can do the remediation and site prep that is necessary under the DOLA grant for this year, as well as designing a product that we can then go out, market, sell, and hold a lottery before the end of the year to get folks under contract to purchase these homes in 2025. So after that, so you will see a contract, and that will mitigate our risk because we will only be due the costs of preparing those plans to the selected developer. Once we actually hold the lottery, there'll be another contract that will be the actual development contract. That's when we'll put surety in place, we will put a deed restriction in place before any property transfers to further protect the county school district and interests in those lands, because obviously those are a public asset that are being collateralized for the benefit of this project. So there'll be another contract, and it's very important for just public transparency to know that we will be putting those protective measures in place as required, or well, I guess they're not required, but it's required. Okay, good. So, we have legal counsel here. As required, then, to make sure that we're protecting the assets. So, with that, I'll open it up.
I can maybe just start off before I forget to say this, I just wanted to thank all the applicants, especially the final three. I mean, they did a ton of work on the initial, on the revisions, on the tours they did with us. So I just wanted to really, I mean, thank everyone for putting a lot of thought and effort into that, and of course staff, you know, for shepherding that and picking up all the questions for the revisions and all the things that got us to this point. So again, before we get into it and vote, just wanted to remember to say that up front. So thanks to everyone involved. That was my opening spiel. So yeah, what do you want us to start anywhere in particular?
I mean,
or?
I think each of the commissioners had a chance, we gave you a scoring matrix, so that wasn't mandatory for you to use, but, you know, my thought on how to potentially approach this is for, you know, if there's consensus on your 1, 2, and 3, picks, then, you know, that's, you know, how you'll probably have gotten there, but if there's, I guess before you do that, if there's any significant questions or clarifications that you want, we can certainly answer those, but at this point, I think they did a really good, all three firms have done a really good job, and I think you know literally the insides and the outsides of what this stuff looks like at this point, so, you know.
I'll just say, I think, yeah, on following Jeff's comments, I also kind of think it's really impressive and admirable what each entity is doing for housing and like trying to get into and support communities and the product that they're building and what they're able to deliver. I think everybody has clearly excelled and in what they are doing, and there are some different considerations that I have in kind of like that square footage, and I imagine our conversations today might center around like the size of the unit and whether we're just putting a roof over someone's head or like truly having it as something that people can really feel at home and be in for a while. So I think that's those are my, I think that is probably the biggest consideration for me. You know, what size units, and then I guess maybe considering that, the topography and the actual of the land and what can fit. I would love to kind of have that conversation with you, Michael, on that. And yeah, I know one of the bigger things like with solution builders was the design and the duplex, and so maybe if you could talk through like their
Sure.
response and feel like.
So what I will say, so I'll address, I think you have kind of three different questions that were in there, so, so what did occur, with these revisions? So number one, all three respondents did provide, especially on the Third Street site, actual grading plans. I mean, they're not engineered, right? They're just, I mean, there's only so much you can do at this point, but they actually address the topography and how they would deal with it. So there's a variety of solutions in there, but each of them have actually come to the table with a different solution. So I'll just know in particular order, I'll actually just go with the first one I grab out of here. So as it relates to topography, so the first one I grabbed is Solution Builders. They actually, if you look at their site plan, you know, they provided that, you know, they would be doing some back slipping and that the foundations would be kind of built in and back slipping up. I think that was a technique that we saw from several different of the groups. And again, the idea being that as you back slope up onto that hill, you know, the foundation, you know, you have a foundation that's straight and you have a back slope on it. So you'll have a deeper foundation and then the foundation potentially steps up as it goes up the slope, but the house sits on obviously a flat foundation, right? So you can see on both of that, on Solution Builders, they're not recommending or needing any retaining walls, as it relates to this project, so. And then your second question, because you brought it up with this one in particular, they did come forward with a duplex design. I think that, you know, is in your packet. The massing of that building, certainly by putting two of the structures together, creates a little bit more width to the buildings and adds some massing. And I think, you know, looking at the proposal of having some duplexes and some single families really gives a neighborhood context to their plan, which I think was much appreciated from the revisions. As well as they did provide costs for the storage unit versus the garage units, on their plans. And then I will say one other really important thing is that, just because it's, you know, reasonable accommodations is required for ADA, if we get ADA applicants, all three responses did provide ADA plans and the ability to provide reasonable accommodations, so they did check that box as well. Adam Berger's group, again, they did the same type of foundation, on Third Street, though, they are providing, if you look at their elevation underneath the unit, they're actually taking advantage of that foundation, and actually putting storage underneath the front of the units. So there's a secondary door, so, which, you know, will be covered underneath the deck, and so folks would have like that cold storage underneath each of those units on Third Street.
Is that gonna be a finished space or unfinished?
It'd be unfinished.
Okay.
It would not have like heat or insulation or anything.
But it wouldn't have a dirt floor.
Probably not. I don't wanna speak for them, but what I've seen and what I've done in that situation is I've actually put in crusher fines. And so I don't know if they plan on doing crusher fines or doing a full-blown, slab underneath that section, but either of those would probably work. Again, their plans, the one thing I will say about their plans is the way they actually approach the project is that if you look at their visual, we asked them in particular to ensure that their longest which is the 70-foot, one-story unit would actually fit on here. From the discussion I had with them, it fits on everywhere but the furthest lot to the west.
Yeah.
And it's not because it wouldn't be able to be graded into the site, it's actually because that lot actually has a kind of a weird triangle missing from the right of way of the school district. So that one, they are proposing a 2-bedroom on, but as you can see, they did provide that these would actually fit, and then the one thing I'll say about their site plan, because the city requires that parking space to be completely on the site, that is a 20-foot parking space in front of each of those units, so we did verify that. They did provide, again, you know, several, you know, the requirement was to provide a 3-bedroom and a 2-bedroom, and a cost for garage, and so they provided quite a few extra plans. So I did in the cost matrix, do my best to kind of find an apples to apples comparison on what they were doing, compared to the other ones. And then finally, Fading West, as it relates to the questions you asked, they do have, some site retainage, on Third Street, which is a retaining wall. But they have that shared parking, and it creates those backyard spaces for each of the units.
And those are the 38 deep, 38 feet deep units? I imagine?
I believe so, they are 32 deep. 32 deep and 16 wide, on those. And
How wide are Burger's units?
I feel like 15.7, I need to restart my computer, it's really not working, I'm sorry.
yeah,
No problem.
they're all within the same kind of width here. Actually, I don't think he has a specified width on theirs. So one dimension I do have is with the porch on it. But I believe theirs is they're all within 14 or 15 to 16. What was the last question about fading, was there any other questions on the Fading West that relates to this?
How deep? that unit, but you said it was the
32.
32 feet.
32, and they have a little bit larger of a unit, that's, 3 bed, 2 bath, which is a little bit deeper, that's 38.
Okay,
And they're actually, their unit width on the larger unit is actually 18. So Fading West, that bigger, more expensive 3 bed, 2 bath, unit actually is a little bit wider as well. And then Fading West did provide, which I think is unique to their proposal, a 1 bedroom unit as well, with both as a side-by-side and also with garage underneath. I think Jackie and I talked about this one, I think this is probably a product that a lot of folks in Lake County would actually be interested in, especially like a single worker, would have a garage space and then have a unit above it. So it was an interesting proposal, and that unit came in at a very strong price point for buyers.
Can I ask a question on that? Cause I think if I got it right, like solution, I mean, when folks came back with the ADA, I mean, at least solution builders, I mean, they can build that, so it's not, I mean, I don't know, I feel like we need to be a little careful
Sure.
about like using that. I mean, I appreciate Fading West doing the work, but I don't think we should ding the others, cause my understanding is, I mean, they could provide a product in that same range, we just didn't ask for full specs
Correct.
on it, other than the ADA.
Yeah, I mean, that, again, it's a very good point. The RFP specified that they had to provide pricing for a 2 and a 3 bedroom.
Yeah.
Not a 1 bedroom. So,
But again, as far as we know, I mean, there's nothing, certainly solution builders with their ADA, you know, that could be a non-ADA 1 bedroom. And I'm sorry, I didn't look at Adam Berger's, but is there anything about the size of their boxes that would preclude doing anything? So I think it's possible.
Yep.
If that turns out to be desired.
yeah, I know, you're correct, the RFP did not require them to price out the 1 bedrooms.
Yeah.
and the 1 bedroom Fading West showed like some layout ideas, but how would that actually practically be put in place if we have a mixture of for sale and or rental? How do we like subdivide that little piece off?
No, they actually show that 1 bedroom under the garage as that unit. So those would be standalone units. They also provide that 1 bedroom as an ADU option on the back of a property. But these ones right here, and actually the comments, just to be transparent, we did respond back because they had a large 3-2 with a garage underneath in their initial proposal. And the staff, I think that unit was fairly expensive at like $480. And we asked them to actually remove that from their proposal because that was pushing up against free market. And we didn't think that unit would sell with a deed restriction on it. So they did make revisions to their proposal, to get their prices back to where we were in the range. And again, to their, you know, 140% at 3.2 with their initial price was, they were in the strike zone on that. But again, it's just, from where I sit as your housing consultant, I don't think I'm gonna be successful in selling a unit that someone could go down the street and buy one without a deed restriction on the same price point. So,
Fair,
that's why we asked them to do that.
yeah.
Jackie, how do you feel?
I'm very excited about today. And as Michael said all along, it's a hard decision. But I think it's wonderful that we have 3 options to choose from. And I think they all have wonderful components to their proposals. I'm sorry to task you with this, but
No, that's okay, I wish I could I can't pull it up just yet, but I was trying to remember if there was any change in the dimension, thank you, in the dimensions from solution builders, with the duplex, from what we had toured, and
No, the one thing that they did, they actually show, so in their proposal for the duplex, they actually show that that duplex can be molded into, I think, I forget what they said, how many different kind of combinations, cause they could do the upper and the lower, as well as the side by side or three, they can also do it as a 3-bedroom or a 2-bedroom side by side. So it's just a matter of putting the boxes together. Sorry, let me find it for you. 6 possible combinations. There you go.
But there's but it was putting what we had seen, putting those together, not varying
Correct.
those dimensions, okay. And I guess I'm very curious with how the board feels on like price per square foot and that kind of notion of the livability and, go ahead, Michael, how did that move?
Yeah, I think that's a really good matrix to look at because they are different sizes. The other thing that I will say is that I did have a very preliminary conversation with Division of Housing about Prop 123. And so, that could provide an extra $55,000 subsidy for units that are under 100% AMI. So those 120 to 140s aren't subject to that. And then the last thing too is down payment assistance goes to 100%, right? Or is it 80?
It does go to 100% and I think it was $25,000.
It's 29 now, but
Okay.
they, with the house, and then the difference is that at 80%, the note is a, is 0% interest until it's a 5-year on the back of a 30 with 0% interest until the expiration of it. And if you're 80 to 100%, it's a 1% interest rate on the back end, so that payment's accumulating, interest as it goes. But those are also tools that we'll need to tap into because of interest rates right now, to assist buyers, especially in those 100% and lower AMIs.
Not a conversation I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
for today, but I'm wondering if I'm very curious about like utilizing Prop 123 and like you're saying, what number of units might we do that with and what does the formula actually fall out to be where if we can't then sell at 140 AMI, are we really making up a gap or are we like, we're making up a gap but we're restricting us or putting another challenge on us in finding funding?
I don't think it'll be another challenge because the use covenant that the state uses is, that we already got for the project is gonna be the same, so it's not an extra restriction per se. What I will say is that.
Because it won't have to be, we could do that for particular units, not like necessarily across the entire project.
Yeah, when we present our application, when we go forward with our application, we will have to specify how many 100% AMIs and less that we will need to. The way I suggest dealing with that is that what you do is you do a pre-qualification period for the lottery. And in that pre-qualification, you start to get kind of percentages of where our applicants are gonna be falling. And then we relate that percentage to the unit diversity and mix. The other thing that's going to occur is that group policy is going to have their needs assessment. And so that's, we're flying a little blind right now, but we won't be in about a month on the diversity of like 2 bedrooms versus 3 bedrooms. And that's where I'm comfortable at, is that I don't need to make an AMI decision over the summer on the Prop 123 yet. In that, as long as the needs assessment is giving me like a 60-40 mix of 3 versus 2 bedrooms is what or whatever it might be, then we can program that site, those different sites to get them ready for construction.
Sarah, I wanted to come at you, ask a question of our thoughts on livability, and I wanted to see, are you thinking like the width of the boxes or like other aspects of sort of being like where snowfall, like what are you thinking?
I think in the living space, in the buildings I mean, me and my family live in a 1,400 square foot home, and it wasn't until like touring them and I was like, oh yeah, this is livable, this is great, and then, but I do think my favorite product was Adam Berger's product. It actually felt like you could be I don't know, it felt like home. I mean, it felt like my house. And I think the other ones, I wouldn't have, I don't think it would have occurred to me had I not toured them. Like then the other ones, even just that, the little bit of space and the stairs in the front versus the back, like really make a difference. And I don't know, I also, I mean, just coincidentally, I suppose, like some of the other smaller things that they had done with their design and raising the ceilings to follow the roof line and like putting in the sauna tubes, the solar tubes, which I think a couple of them had, not just Adam. But those are actually things that I had done in my own house to make the space feel like bigger and livable. And I mean, it wasn't because those same things had been done, but I think it made me appreciate the nuance of the design. And it felt like a space that you weren't like in transition, might not be in transition from as like an interim. It really felt like a space that could be somebody, a family or multiple people could be in for a long period of time, but I'm not sure. I mean, I think that's our like philosophical discussion, what are we trying to provide, and is the number of units that different, given that they can provide that space. Again, I'm really sorry that I can't pull my stuff up, but I guess that's what I'm feeling like, and I could honestly go either way. Because I think either way, we're providing housing and that's important, and I think it'll be beneficial for folks. I just was curious what everybody kind of felt about that.
One important thing I'll just again say as when you're a housing consultant, my experience was like when I started in Crested Butte, there was the affordable housing world was like these affordable housing should be a stepping stone into like getting into undeed restricted housing, and that was the philosophy behind it. That has been defunct philosophy for now a decade. When I took over, there was no movement from a deed restricted. There like maybe 5% of the folks did that, and the 5% that did that were not moving from. They weren't moving from Crested Butte to Crested Butte. They were moving from Crested Butte to someplace else.
Mm-hmm.
So you're losing the workforce. So it's not that is important. That this is forever housing for most folks unless they move out of the community.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a fallacy that I had to learn the hard way in my career.
Yeah. So to come back to Sarah's point, like making sure it feels like home, not temporary rental is important.
Yeah, and I will be, I have had a very pessimistic view of modular housing, personally. And I will say that this has been a very good practice for me to revisit modular housing and tour it again. And so I do believe, like, for the price point and the product, my golden rule is I would never build anything I wouldn't live in myself. And after touring all three, respondents' housing types, I would buy, especially at the price points in today's market.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, like just touring the factories and seeing it, I mean, it's framed and built to code, it's inspected to code. I mean, they're not cutting corners on like durability, safety, code issues, which I think is different than the perception or, yeah.
The other thing that I will say that impressed me on all three respondents again is that I think the fact that they designed this stuff in a factory, they have spent a lot of time of looking at every corner, every last square inch of the units to create like cabinets and closet spaces, and like the necessities to live. And then the last thing that I will say is that all the respondents are providing some type of external storage, which up here in the mountains is essential. Because you can't, one, it snows, and two, you can't bring bikes and kayaks and skis and everything else, lawnmowers into a house. So, I will say that they did a very good job of addressing the difference between urban living and resort living or mountain living, in their proposals by doing that, so, again, none of them making it easy, I feel.
I forgot, to look, did we get, cause which developer didn't have operable windows? Did we get that changed?
Solution builders. And the operable they do have, just to be clear, they have operable windows in all the bedrooms as required for egress. I don't know if they would be willing to change out their operable windows or not.
Okay,
They didn't address that.
oh, okay,
I mean, presumably that's the same rough space, like, you know, dimensions, like, I mean, it would obviously be more expensive, but it shouldn't require massive redesign of, I mean, right, like window sizes.
I don't know the answer to that one,
Pretty similar.
so. And I think one thing I will say is that if we start opening it up to like them responding, because they're all here, then we should have.
Yep.
You should come up with a list.
Yeah.
But I would presume that just given they order windows from a producer, so if that was a thing, that they could order window packages for the,
Yeah, yeah. Sarah, to come back to your livability question, I mean, I do remember that feeling in the Adam Burger units, that sort of extra length somehow, especially the larger ones, sort of, that was an interesting openness, but I guess to me, and a couple of points, one is like, we don't have to meet all, like, this is one project of like, I mean, that's something that I think, Michael, you've like said a lot and is finally imprinted in my brain, like, you know, there's gonna be lots of different housing projects and no one project is gonna meet every need, or point, and I guess to me, like having toured them and looked at them, I think I mean, to me, they all just feel like durable, like they're somewhere you can live, like with the storage, like practical living space inside, outside storage space, you know, attention to detail and the durability to survive up here. And yeah, I feel like they all sort of have like some, you know, like little pros and cons depending on what you like in a house.
The other really important thing that I will just say is, again, going back to you don't solve every problem, but having done this, you actually are building 1.5 houses for every house you build per unit. And the reason for that is you have transition from your buyers, now that they're moving into permanent housing, will transition out of rental housing. Now, will that be 100% across the board? But I would say about half the time it is, and you're freeing up an additional affordable rental unit or a rental unit in your community. So it actually has a multiplier effect that I've experienced in my projects, which is actually a really positive thing. And what you tend to see too is that the units that I would say that where you don't get to have, that are like kind of the low end unit that hasn't been fixed in a while, it starts to push property owners to actually make some improvements to the rentals so that they can get those leased up if they start to see kind of a gap in leasing. So it actually has a pretty significant impact beyond just that one unit.
Maybe, I mean, to keep talking about different things, I think something that really I came away with all the presentations and especially, and the tours and chatting with the teams, you know, on site, I mean, I don't know if we wanna like jump, I mean, I really liked I wanna say, the depth of the solution builders team. I just feel like the level of support and professionalism and, you know, just the way the team as we talked to them, hopped in on sort of creatively thinking through, like our questions and, concerns and, like on the roof, which, oh yeah, we could do, and they're all, you could just see them all like checking in with each other. And not to, not to go too far with that, but I felt like this is one of our first projects. It's a hard, we're a hard community to build in and find qualified buyers for, so I think just the depth of that team and some of their sort of marketing and home buyer, assistance, capabilities like stood out for me. As something that could like really help us, actually get people in these homes. So.
I mean, honestly, I fell in love with each of them as we
Yeah.
went through, right? They're all so impressive with like the foundation and solutions and that just combined partnerships across the whole organization. When you said the development, or I don't know, sorry, you said support in, that was one thing I wasn't sure about, like there was marketing and all that support, but as a new project for them as well, I didn't quite understand how much support we would need or how much we both might rely on the experience of Fading West and or Adam in kind of grading and layering and seeking additional funding. What are your thoughts on that, having marinated on that for a while now?
Want me to start and you can jump in? I will say, in my years of doing this, the amount of legwork to get the buyer to cross the finish line is just as much work as I'm doing to get the house built. So that's not a small part of this, because you can't just build a house, you actually have to get the person in the house, and you have to make sure they're gonna be successful in the long run, because most folks are one life event away from losing their house, right? In today's reality of the market, I can even say that for myself, if something major happened to me and I couldn't work, I'd be selling my house pretty quick. So you need to be putting folks in like loan packages and different, and they have a built-in marketing. Now it's based in Denver, but I feel like from the solution builder side of things, that was a unique niche that they had built in with that sales office. But not to say that building those marketing materials and having the designs over the next few months, we couldn't get there. The other thing I will say is that on the flip side, both Fading West and Adam Berger are using a bank that is CRA, so Community Reinvestment Funds. And that CRA bank actually can offer, because of the financing, could actually come in with lower interest rate, like conventional financing for buyers. So they actually, by having the access to the CRA funds and the construction, are actually opening up a different avenue for buyers as well, so
And
there's.
affordability. I know, and solutions don't have that connection, but they sure were willing to and wanting to learn and like invest in that process. That was very clear.
And then they have, on their end, they have the savings because there's no construction financing,
Right,
so.
right.
And market-wise, I just kind of want to throw out what's happening in our market right now. So we have 37 homes on the market in Leadville. It seems like we're seeing price reductions. I really wish this was a rental project. I really wish we would have been successful with the Brucing campaign. Because I'm super intimidated about being able to find buyers for all the units that fit the requirements and the eligibility. And so just want to kind of throw that out there.
Well, and I think that makes me go back to that sense of like the space of the house and a forever home. I feel like the better we hit that target, the more people will be willing to, I mean, these aren't bad price points. At all, I don't think, and if we can get 50,000 for half the units and knock off another 50,000 on the sale price, and whatever we might additionally be able to contribute, gosh, I just think that's like a home run for our investment. I don't know, I keep going back to that sense, and I don't know that I can like justify it in any other way other than kind of like using, Michael, your experience in that forever
I-
home, like I think there's something to that, and I think that people get scared or look away from like a 900 or 1,000 square foot home, a 3-bedroom, when they're trying to house a family. I don't know, not that it can't be successful, but
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to, I'm like real, I was really excited to call DOH and be like, here's where these prices are falling, because again, the model that we're doing, which is like which is, I call it eating your broccoli, where we deal with the horizontal infrastructure costs and only pass on a vertical. But I think when I do the Prop 123 model with whoever we decide for the actual grant application, they have a spreadsheet they can plug all this into. It's gonna be very telling on how dealing with the pre-development in-house is so much more cost effective long run for division of housing, and that this kind of process that we've undergone is really an important process for local governments to do before getting the developer to the table, because those costs are not small, right? We're taking a huge bite of the apple now to make sure that this price point is what we can pass along at the end of the project. So, but again, to your point, I think when you look at those price points, and you can see on the matrix, where there are gaps, none of those gaps are over 55,000 at 100% AMI.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we're in the strike zone.
it's great. Yeah, doesn't make it any easier.
yeah. And also, no, I mean, if I'm reading it right, like the larger Adam Berger house, I mean, it's bigger, but it's more expensive with a bigger subsidy gap.
Yeah, I mean, that is, to your
Yeah.
point, like
I
livability,
mean,
that gap is much different when you actually, cause he has the 3-bed, 2-bath, which is a single story, which is, so that I separated those out on your scoring sheet. You can see that, but the comparative to the 3-2 compared to Solution Builders and Fading West's price point, which I think, sorry, how's that the new sheet? I think is the top line.
339 for Solution, 383
Yes, the
for-
top one is the bigger unit for Adam as product.
mhm,
So that gap on there is, that top line, what I will say is that top line is probably your most apples comparison. It's the most expensive unit. But it is like, when you talk about livability and the stuff you saw, that's probably the most comparable across all three. Cause like, for instance, that bigger unit on the spreadsheet for Solution Builders, if you recall, when we toured, if you remember upstairs, there was that separate, in the hallway in the middle, just like Adam's had, there was that middle section of the house
Like
that
living space,
a living space that like, they said that most people put desks in any room that workers work in. So that, again, is like like apples to apples to Adams and Fading West's product, that extra space is where you get that, so.
yeah, what was the alternative, what are we looking at as the alternative?
So the
to
alternative one, sorry,
No, thank you, yeah.
you're good. This one, so on the pricing sheet, sorry, how this still here, just wanna make sure, is the smaller unit, that's only a single story.
Oh,
So this one isn't the one you toured, so I think there'll be a big difference in this price point, right? Versus the other one. So Adam has a single story, but that one's only, what's the square footage on that, sorry?
1092.
Yeah, so that one's size wise is much smaller. Yeah, so, it's one thing I didn't print.
Cal, did you have any other questions or initial? Nope.
Not making this easy.
Huh?
I said this is not getting any easier.
No, it's, yeah, I'm kinda tickled pink because it's like, you know what? You guys have a hard decision, that's a good thing, so, I'm like, you know,
I
so
know.
there's normally something that pushes one and I'm just like, I'm not,
Yeah, I know, I'm really torn, cause I really appreciate truly every developer and the neighbor effects of, you know, partnering, I think that's super important. But all of those other experiences and it keeps coming back to the physical space for me. But again, really, I could be swayed either way.
Can you say more about I think you said the CRA support,
yeah, so,
you said Adam Berger and Fading West
yeah.
provide?
So the CRA fund is Community Reinvestment Acts. Every bank has I don't know if the right word is a liability, but that they are required to reinvest certain portions of the CRA funds into the community. And this project is within the strike zone for significant. And so banks with those funds have to be a little bit more aggressive with their lending on it because they're required by law to invest that money back in the community. And so we will see the benefit of that in the form of better interest rates on the construction financing, as well as the lender so when they have a local bank in their region, then they actually get double credit for it because it's investing directly where they operate. And so they can also be aggressive, more competitive for certain buyers in the market, on perm financing as well. And the way, I think the easiest way to describe it is they have because it's CRA funds, they have the benefit of like a longer duration of how they spend those funds with interest rates. So interest rates do this, but they're able to do more of this with their interest rate on CRA funds because they're required by law to invest that money long-term into the community. And so it doesn't have as much fluctuation like this as the free market interest rates will have versus what they're able to, you know, they're pretty set. So sometimes CRA funds, when interest rates were really low, CRA funds aren't as competitive or even less competitive. I wanna say they're less competitive, but because they're a portfolio, they're kind of more constant over time. So right now, with higher interest rates, they're definitely more competitive. And then, I mean, and then the other important thing, as it relates to this, just going to the loan factor, all of them have created fee simple ownership structures for loans. So if we have a veteran that wants a VA loan or USDA loans, we're gonna be able to provide access to those loan packages for folks that have served our country and deserve the right to purchase a home with a VA loan. So, that's what, again, doesn't help you out at all, cause they can, you can do it in each of those, but.
Do you have any specific concern about, I guess, the different size units and like the variability between the ability to create them or fit them and or the price points there? I mean, cause when you, like the solution builders 2 and 3 bedrooms are the same, at least not the alternative, are the same square footage, but without really the wall for the third bed, I like that upstairs space, and the other square footage kinda in the other two change a bit, but those designs also change a bit to make it.
Yeah, you know, what I will say twofold is going back to my Crested Butte days. Those I think your market is gonna yield that the 2-bedroom unit is the most desirable unit for most buyers. First. The second thing I will say is that the upside down living is actually the most desirable. My experience with building in Crested Butte, which has the same kind of snow, is that half the year you can't see out of your first story window. I'm sure you guys probably
Yeah,
know
no,
all
that's a
about
cool
that.
feature.
And so having the flexibility of doing the upstairs living, and then what that does is the claustrophobicness of being stuck inside really is, because you see out in every direction, really helps. And I would say that 90% of what I've built for affordable housing in Crested Butte was the upside down living.
Can they all do that?
I'm probably pretty sure that if we talk to Fading West and Denver, that they could. Now,
Cause
with,
your plumbing stuff's gonna be the same, it's just basically that's, flipped over.
the only thing with Adam's product is you remember the bottom box is longer than the top box. So he might have to do some rethought process thinking on that, but I think, the solution builders flip, is a very, like, I wouldn't say very important, but is an option that I think a lot of folks will elect to do. And when they purchase, because just my personal experience, it actually lives really well, because the other thing too is like, you come home and like you go and you get changed and then you go upstairs. And then you can, like, there's still, in the winter, there's still light, in your windows, whereas it's pitch black, so. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, so. I mean, I had plywood on the side of my windows for 6 months of the year.
I mean, I do think too, though, to that point, like each of these sites actually has a pretty nice feature in their location, because there's like 2 roadways and they're not gonna be looking at housing right across the street, and the 6th Street also from the back view of the house and enjoying a backyard. I mean, that slopes down to the hospital and you've got that view in perpetuity as well, so it's some pretty prime real estate.
They're gonna be nice.
It's
I
gonna
think
be
they're
nice.
gonna, I think we'll be competitive with the rest of the market just because of how the locations, you're right.
You guys aren't being helpful. Just
I stated my current preference
Oh, what's your current
as
preference?
solution builders.
Oh, okay.
My preference is Adam Burger.
I think just because of the product, and yeah, I think my preference is also Adam Berger's product.
I like the size of the units, the stairs in the back,
Yeah.
yeah, and then, if you could flip it, that'd be great. But looking at all of them, and the feedback on Bonavia was good, and it's a tough decision though.
It is.
I mean, it's not easy, but that's my decision. And I looked at it, and when we were touring the factories, I looked at the quality of the wood and the being married to a woodworker, took a very close look at the construction stuff and the little detail things, and yeah, it came down to between them and Solution and Fading West. But Berger's units are larger, to your point. I think that for a lot of these folks, this could be a forever house. I think they should have good curb appeal and be high quality and be something that people are desirable to buy and live in.
Yeah, I agree. I think Fading West felt pretty similar, but not, just wasn't quite there.
It's close.
Yeah.
Real close. Yeah.
Well,
I'm comfortable looking for a motion.
Well, motion to vote on the selection of the builder for this project. Did I get that right?
I mean, I think you should name,
say who
yeah,
it is.
yeah, name who we would be voting yes on.
Well, okay, we're voting against Solution Builders, Allen Berger, and Fading West.
But I think I'd look for a motion to approve Adam Berger as the top selection.
Okay, our motion to approve Adam Berger as a top selection, that's 3.
I'll second.
Okay. Any
Any
further
questions?
discussion?
So the only thing I'll add to your motion is that, just to be clear, you're entering into negotiations for a design contract, and it's not the construction contract, just to.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, I mean, is there anything else we need to specify in the actual motion? I mean, with that clarification?
No, I
I
think
think that's sufficient to give us guidance and.
you're in, we'll be instructing negotiators basically for us to bring back a contract.
I really wanna know if this upsets anybody.
That's good.
Either of these two.
What's gonna happen?
I mean, I know it's gonna upset other people, but.
I'm truly
Concerned
being
about her.
honest, I don't think there's a bad selection. I don't know if you have any other.
No, and I think that the livability helps with my concern about the current market.
Okay,
You know, the size, the extra square footage, I think that that's, gonna be helpful in marketing the units.
Do we need to amend the motion to include just the design?
Please.
Alright, I'll move to amend the motion, or can you just, can you only do that as the person? It doesn't matter,
He needs to.
he needs to.
So amend the motion to
Include,
include
or to clarify that it is for
Clarify
the
that
first
this is-
stage of
It's
a design contract.
A design contract.
Okay, to clarify that this is for the first stage of a design contract.
okay, I'll second that amendment.
Okay.
Motion on the amendment?
Sorry for the procedural question, do we need to vote on the amendment first? Or can we,
No,
or since,
he amended
since
his,
Yeah.
that, okay, so we just have the one
Oh, okay.
amended motion on the table
Okay,
for to begin negotiation on the design contract with Adam Berger.
okay.
And I think not seeing any desire for more questions or comments or discussion, so I'll call for a vote.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Alright.
Whew.
Thanks. Rest of these back. Alright,
Thank you, Michael.
yep.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you.
This staff is commendable.
Thanks.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, shortly.
Good morning.
Do you want to ask them for their standard design?
Let's control that. What I will get is the cost.
Oh, sorry, we will adjourn the special meeting at 10 AM.